TradersPost works by allowing you to connect a trading signal or a trading alert to a webhook URL with a message attached to it. And that message is something we call a JSON payload. And that JSON payload includes the instructions for what to do with your trade signal, whether to buy or sell, or even exit or cancel an existing open order, or add to an existing position. And there are three different ways to send over these messages to your TradersPost webhook URLs. The first way to do it is through sending over a specific price. You can send over a small instruction to say, buy this ticker when an event occurs. So you could say when the price crosses over 408.83 on the SPY, I'll send over an instruction to buy the ticker. SPY. Ticker is a variable from TradingView, which can be listed out in their instructions here. They have all these different variables that represent different things happening or different things available to you. Ticker is just the current traded symbol, and then I'll say buy. So when the price triggers at this point, it's going to send an instruction to my webhook URL to actually buy the SPY. The second way to do it is if you're using a strategy like this MACD strategy here, for example, I can add an alert to that strategy, and then you'll see here that TradingView automatically fills in some of these strategy-based variables. Well, what we have done with TradingView is made it to where you can paste in a JSON payload that's specifically for strategies. And you can see here, if you build your Pine script as a strategy, you only need one alert per ticker. For all the buys and all the sells, all we really need is this one message body, which tells us what ticker it's trading, what action to execute, buy or sell, what the sentiment is, bullish or bearish or flattened, what the quantity of contracts to purchase is, and then the price at the particular time that this event took place. And so as long as I send this to my webhook URL, then this strategy is already set up. Now I just hit create, and whenever a trigger occurs for this strategy, the signal will be sent over. The third way to do this, however, is to actually write your JSON into your strategy. So for the 855 EMA crossover strategy that we wrote at TradersPost, there's actually a JSON payload written into the strategy, so that all you have to do is say, for the 855 cross strategy, I want to send a signal whenever alert function calls occur, and then send it to my webhook URL, and there's no messing around with JSON payloads. The downside is when you write JSON inside your code like this, it can be cumbersome and kind of tricky. I have to use these end string parameters and then concatenate each of the variables along with new strings inside of it, and it's easy to make a mistake with these JSON payloads. So in answer to this, I've written a message library that allows you to write the JSON payloads inside of your strategy, specifically for this third way of developing JSON payloads. Let's say you have a strategy you've written and you want to make it easy to write the JSON payload into your strategy so that it's all written into one place. Well, this message library allows you to do that just by building the webhook message, building the take profit, and the stop loss message. It's a fairly simple library. The main thing you'll see here is there are some constants available to you to make sure that these words are spelled correctly. There's a webhook message, which includes the ticker, the action, the sentiment, the price, the quantity, and then individual take profit and stop loss message bodies, which have to be sort of a sub message inside of that message. So the first thing you'll build is the webhook message itself, and then if you have a take profit and a stop loss attached to it, you'll include those as well. And so I have several examples that I'll show you here. In this little testing strategy I put together, I created all these different types of messages to showcase how it's actually building these JSON payloads automatically. One of the first examples here is we go long with a trailing stop of 0.575%. So the first thing I have to do is actually import the TradersPost library, and this is actually using a development version, so let me update this to say import TradersPost Inc. /webhookmessage/1, which is the first version of this, as WM. And then I want to create a constant variable for all of my constants. We'll just call this CNST, and we'll create a new instance of the constants, which I showed you before are all of these variables here. So once the constants are set up, now I don't have to type out words like buy or bearish or bullish. I can actually just refer to the constants. So for this example here where I want to go long with one contract and a trailing stop of 0.75%, then I just instantiate a new webhook message, so message equals, and I'll attach the ticker, which isn't a required field. If you don't set this, it will automatically set it to the current ticker for you. The action here is buy, the sentiment is bullish. I'll send a quantity of one contract, and then for the stop loss variable, I'm going to send a new stop loss message, and I'm going to tell it that it's a trailing stop and create a trailing percent of 0.75%. Now, anytime I create one of these new message bodies, I have to compile it into a JSON string. So you'll see here at the end of the instantiated type, I have another chained method on top of it, which says build stop loss JSON. And at the end of my webhook message type, I have a method attached to it that says build webhook JSON. And so what we end up with here in this little message is the JSON string, which you can see printed to the screen in a label. If I zoom out to the first one here, it shows the timestamp, it shows the ticker that I'm trading on, the action is buy, sentiment is bullish, quantity is 1, and then it also includes a stop loss message body with a trailing stop of 0.75%. So the main advantage here is that I don't have to worry about whether or not this string was assembled correctly, or that I included all the commas that needed to be included, and that there's a colon between each key and value. If I use this message library, it makes my job a lot easier of just constructing the rules that need to be followed for this trade. So to use a real live example, let's take a look at the 855 strategy, which has a couple of order requests inside of it. We'll look at the long condition first. The very first thing that it's going to do is send over an action to buy the default quantity defined. And if the attached trail is true, which is with the broker, then it will send over a trailing stop with the specified trailing percent. And you can see here that this message is kind of complex. There's a lot of concatenated plus signs. There's these single quote strings with double quotes inside of them, which, if not escaped properly, you can run into issues. So the way I typically solve that is by using single quotes for the string and then double quotes inside the string, and that helps escape properly. But this is kind of cumbersome. So instead of having this big concatenated long string, instead, let's figure out a way to use the library for this. So at the top, I'm going to import the library first. We'll say import TradersPost Inc. /webhookmessage/1 as WM. And then here we'll instantiate new constants, which I'll call C and ST. And we'll say wm.constants.new. This instantiates the object called constants, which if you look inside the code here, you'll see there is just this list of constant variables with strings attached to them. So now that I have the constants defined, the next thing I have to do is create this string from the library. Before, what I had was a long alert message with all these strings concatenated together. Now I'm going to create some rules around creating one on the fly. So what we're going to do is use the library to create this long alert message. We'll say long alert message equals wm.webhookmessage.new, and the action is a constant action buy, and the quantity in this case is the default quantity defined by the strategy, which is at the top, or where a default quantity is defined by the strategy. We can send along a price if we want to, otherwise it will send it along for you. In this case, the strategy is designed to open a position with a market order and sell with a market order. And then there's this extra rule here which says attached trail equals true, which is in reference to sending along a trailing stop directly to the broker, in this case TradeStation. And what I want to do is make sure that first that argument is true, otherwise we don't send anything at all. So what we're going to do is say stop loss equals, and we're going to create a ternary operator here that says attach trail equals true. Then we'll create a new stop loss message, and we'll say type equals constant dot type trailing stop, and the trail percent equals 0.75. Now, I can write this out statically, or I can take it from the settings. So what you can do here is just send along the value, long trail percent, and multiply it by 100. As you can see here at the very top, the default value is 0.75%, while multiplying that by 0.01. So to get it back into a whole percentage, I have to multiply by 100 again. So if the attached trail is true, then we'll attach this stop loss message. Otherwise, we'll just send along an empty string. Now remember, when we create this new type, we can't just send along the object. We actually have to build this into a JSON message. So I'm going to send along the function build stop loss JSON. And I said function, but I meant method. Inside of the library, there are 3 different methods that you can use. You can build the webhook JSON, build the take profit JSON, or build the stop loss JSON. And what it does is it basically goes through your object and it builds the JSON for you. Now, at this point, we still have a webhook message type, and we haven't compiled this into a string yet. So the last method that we'll use is build webhook JSON. And now what we have is a long alert message. There's still an error happening here, and that's because I'm trying to reuse the long alert message, which is already defined before. So we're going to comment this one out, which is our old string. And now we have a new one, which uses the Webhook Message Library. And as you can see, this is all kind of typed on one line. So to clean this up a little bit, what I can do is add this to a new line and then indent by 2 spaces. And so now we can see that we have a long alert message. It sends over an action property, a quantity, and a stop loss. And the stop loss is one ternary operator, which says that if the attached trail is true, then send along this new message body, which we compile into a JSON string. Otherwise, just send an empty string. And so that won't do anything at all. And now, when this is built, and we built the JSON, the alert will send along the message compiled from the library. Now, there's another instance here where I have long alert exit message, where if there is an instance where we need to exit the position because the direction changes or the price goes below the trailing stop, then we need to make sure this message is built. So let's use the library to create this. And that's it. Now I can take out this hard-coded JSON string and just use the Webhook Message Library. But I just need to build this into a JSON. And now this is a string that can get used in these 2 locations. So the rest of my code is for the short side. Essentially, I can do this 2 more times. So really quickly here, I'll code this out. Now I've created a new message which sells the position with the default quantity from the strategy and using the short trail percent as part of the stop loss message. And then I have one more to finish here, which is the short alert exit message. There we go. Now the short alert message has been built. I'm getting a little error here on the end of line without continuation, and this is because of the way that TradingView allows you to set up your parameters for types and methods on a new line. These have to be indented with 2 spaces, and it has to be consistent. And that allows you to put your parameters on multiple lines. And the last thing I have to do is build the webhook JSON. And now this is converted into a string for the 2 locations for the short side. And that's it. Now I've used the Webhook Message Library to build my JSON payloads without having to type JSON manually into my strategy. Instead, I just use the library, which cuts down on a number of errors. That ensures that the message values are typed correctly. It ensures that I have and now understand all of the parameters for each of these types of messages. And if I have any questions about what the values need to be, I can either hover over the message here or control click the message in order to pop open the library and take a look at all the different parameters that can be sent with these messages, along with some examples inside of the body. Now, what I'm going to also do inside of this video is share a URL to this webhook message testing library I put together, which was mainly for me to develop this library, but there are all these examples built into it, which shows things like adding a contract, canceling existing orders, exiting. I'll write this up in a GitHub URL and send this in this video so that you have access to these different types of examples to draw from. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments or join us on Discord.